The fire cracked behind me after I had already walked away from it. I stopped so hard my flashlight slipped in my hand because I knew that sound. A fresh pop, a shift in burning wood, not the dying hiss of old coals. Someone had just moved the logs. I turned slowly and pointed the light back toward the abandoned campsite I had found 5 seconds earlier, and for a moment I honestly couldn't breathe, because there was nobody there. Just the fire, still glowing orange, still alive. And sitting beside it, in the dirt, was my backpack. The same backpack that was still supposed to be on my shoulders. I grabbed at my chest and felt nothing. My straps were gone. My radio was gone. My canteen was gone. Somehow, without hearing a single footstep behind me, my pack was sitting beside a fire in a campsite that should have been empty. Then my radio inside that bag hissed, and a voice whispered, "Don't turn around. My name is Daniel Mercer." I was 32 that fall, working temporary search support in a remote section near the north side of Yellowstone National Park. My job wasn't glamorous. Most nights I drove old service roads, checked trailheads, and looked for hikers who thought warning signs were optional. 90% of the time it was boring. Cold roads, static on the radio, empty woods. The kind of job where your own thoughts become louder than anything around you. That night started with a missing camper report just after 9:40 p.m. A man in his 20s never returned from a solo hike near an older backcountry trail. Dispatch sent me because I was closest. They said it was probably nothing. Maybe a dead phone. Maybe he got turned around after sunset. It happened more often than people think. I remember believing that too, at first. The trailhead parking lot was empty when I got there, except for one dusty Subaru with the driver door half open. Keys still hanging from the ignition, wallet on the seat, phone charging from the dash. Nobody leaves all that behind unless something made them leave fast. I radioed it in and started down the trail with a flashlight and my shoulder radio. About half a mile in, I found fresh boot prints leaving the marked path. They cut sharply into the trees where there wasn't supposed to be any campsite at all. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Then I noticed something worse. The footprints only went one direction, into the woods. Nothing came back out. I crouched there for a second, staring at them in the dirt, trying to tell myself the return prints were just hidden in the pine needles. But deep down I already knew they weren't. Dispatch called over the radio and asked for an update. I told them I was following tracks off trail. There was a pause before the dispatcher answered. "That area doesn't have any registered campsites." I looked ahead into the dark trees and said, "I know." Then I kept walking anyway. About 3 minutes later, I saw the glow between the trees. A campfire. Low, orange, steady. I expected to find a scared hiker warming his hands. Instead, I stepped into a small clearing and found a campsite that looked like someone had vanished in the middle of using it. A folding chair knocked sideways, coffee cup still seeming, half-sipped tent, lantern hanging from a branch, and a fire burning low in the stone ring like someone had fed it less than a minute earlier. But there was nobody there. No movement, no voices. Nothing. I stood there listening to the woods, and they felt too quiet. No wind, no insects, nothing. That kind of silence in the forest feels wrong, because even at night something should be moving. I slowly called out, "Park Service." No answer. "If someone's here, say something." Still nothing. Then my flashlight passed across the side of the tent and I saw a shadow move inside. I stepped back so fast my boot hit a cooler. "Hello," I said again. The tent moved once, just enough to make the fabric twitch. I reached down, grabbed my knife, and moved closer. My pulse was so loud I could hear it. I pulled the zipper down in one quick motion and shined a light inside. Empty. Sleeping bag. Open map. No person. No animal. Nothing. I stared into that tent, trying to understand what I had just seen. Then my radio crackled on my shoulder, and dispatch said, "Daniel, who's with you?" I froze. "What?" "Your body cam just picked up a second person in frame." I turned around instantly. Nothing. Just trees. There's nobody here, I said. The dispatcher went quiet for a second. Then she said, "Someone just walked behind you." I spun the flashlight in a full circle. Empty woods. Dark trunks. Fire popping behind me. "You still there?" she asked. I didn't answer because that's when I noticed my backpack sitting beside the fire. The one that had been on me seconds earlier. And then my radio whispered from inside it, "Don't turn around." I did anyway. There was nothing there. But the trees behind me looked different. Closer somehow. Like the darkness had stepped forward while I wasn't watching. I grabbed my bag and backed away from the fire. "Dispatch," I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Can you still see my camera?" "Yes," she said. Her voice sounded strained now. "Daniel, you need to leave." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because there's someone standing beside you." I ran the light to my left so fast it blurred. Nothing. "There's nobody here." "He's there," she whispered. "He's matching your movement." I couldn't speak. I just stood there in that clearing with the flashlight shaking in my hand. Then the fire suddenly flared higher. Not naturally. Like someone had dropped a fresh log onto it. Sparks jumped upward. And in that orange flash I saw a second shadow on the ground beside mine. Standing too close. Nearing me. Exactly. But there was nobody there to cast it. I stumbled backward and nearly fell. "Dispatch, tell me what you see." All I heard was breathing. Then she said quietly, "Daniel, it looks like you." My legs almost gave out. I turned and walked backward toward the trail, keeping the light on the campsite. The second shadow stayed beside mine until I crossed the edge of the clearing. Then it disappeared. The fire dropped low again like nothing had happened. I should have run right then. Instead, I made one stupid mistake. I looked down at the map inside the tent. It was open to the section of forest where I was standing, and right in the middle of that blank area was a hand-drawn circle in red ink. In the center of the circle, someone had written one sentence. "You were here yesterday." My stomach dropped so hard, I almost threw up. I had never been in that clearing before in my life. Then dispatch came back on the radio. "Daniel, your GPS just stopped moving." "No, it didn't," I said. "I'm walking right now." "No," she said. "Your signal has been sitting in the same spot for 20 minutes. I stopped. "That's impossible." "Daniel," she said slowly, "whoever is moving on your camera now isn't you." I looked at the radio like it had bitten me. Then from somewhere deeper in the trees, my own voice said, "Help me." I dropped the flashlight. It rolled once, and the beam turned sideways through the trees. For half a second, the light caught a man standing between two pines. About 30 yards away. Ranger jacket. Same height. Same face. My face. Then the light rolled again, and he was gone. I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran. Branches hit my face. My boots slipped in mud. My radio kept slamming against my chest while dispatch shouted my name over and over. But every few seconds, another voice answered her first. My voice. "I found him. He's still running. He sees me now." I don't remember how long I ran. Could have been 10 minutes. Could have been an hour. The woods all looked the same. Every tree, every shadow. And then I saw headlights through the branches. My truck. Parked at the trailhead. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly gave out. I sprinted the last few yards, yanked the door open, and climbed inside. Then I froze. My keys were already in the ignition. I always kept them clipped to my belt when I searched. Slowly, I looked at the passenger seat. My backpack was sitting there, zipped closed, dry, exactly where I always left it. I stared at it for a full second before reaching down and touching my shoulders. My pack was still on me. I looked back at the passenger seat. Another backpack. Same dirt, same patch, same name stitched on the strap. Then the radio inside that second bag crackled softly, and my own voice whispered, "You left me out there. I don't remember driving back." I barely remember filing the report. Search teams never found the missing camper. They never found that campsite either. No fire pit, no tent, no footprint. Nothing. They said stress can make people see strange things alone in the woods. Maybe they're right. Maybe exhaustion did something to me that night. That's what I told myself for months. Until 2 weeks later, when I unpacked my gear at home and found an extra item in my backpack that wasn't mine. A photograph. Old, folded, smoke-stained. It showed me standing beside that campfire, smiling at the camera. And behind me, just beyond the trees, something wearing my face was taking the picture. The third time I passed the same burned wooden sign, I finally noticed my own flashlight sitting on top of it. That was impossible, because my flashlight was in the passenger seat beside me. I remember staring through the windshield at that old sign in the middle of the headlights, trying to understand what I was looking at. Because tied around the handle of the flashlight, on the sign, was the same red tape I had wrapped around mine earlier that week after dropping it on a trail. Then the radio on my dashboard crackled, and a voice that sounded exactly like mine said, "Don't stop here again." My hand froze on the steering wheel. My own voice, calm, low, like it had been waiting for me to hear it. And when I slowly turned to look at the passenger seat, the flashlight that had been there a second earlier was gone. My name's Ryan. I was 31, and for one summer I worked seasonal maintenance in Rocky Mountain National Park, just outside Estes Park. Most of my shifts were fixing trail signs, checking locked access roads, clearing fallen branches after storms, and driving between ranger cabins that tourists never saw. During peak season, if something broke after dark, whoever was on call handled it. That week, I was on call. It had already been a long shift. Rain had moved through the mountains all evening, and by the time dispatch called me close to midnight, the roads were slick and the trees were dripping hard enough to sound like footsteps on the roof of the truck. They said one of the electronic warning signs near an old service road had gone dark and needed to be checked before morning traffic. It wasn't a big deal. 20-minute drive, reset the breaker, drive back. I'd done it before. The road cut through a section of forest that tourists rarely entered. No campsites, no scenic overlooks, just miles of narrow pavement between black trees. My headlights only showed a tunnel of wet asphalt and pine trunks sliding past on both sides. About 15 minutes in, I noticed the first sign, wooden, old, hand-painted, Black Canyon access, 4 miles. I remember it because dispatch had told me to turn there. I passed it, kept driving, and waited for the road split. It never came. Instead, 5 minutes later, I saw the exact same sign again. Same cracked post. Same peeling white paint. Same bullet hole near the bottom corner. I slowed down and looked in the mirror, thinking maybe there were 2 signs. There weren't. The road behind me disappeared into darkness. Nothing else, just wet black pavement and trees. I actually laughed at first because I figured I was tired. Maybe I missed a turn and looped around without noticing. The roads out there twisted enough to mess with you at night. So I checked the GPS mounted on the dash. The map had frozen. My truck icon sat in the middle of empty green with no road under it. Then it blinked once and showed me 3 miles behind where I knew I was. That's when I noticed something worse. The mile marker beside the road said 22. I had passed mile marker 22 10 minutes earlier. Same dent in the metal. Same sticker half torn off the back. I pulled over and stepped out into the cold because suddenly the cab felt too small. The forest was dead quiet. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just water dripping from the branches. My boots crunched gravel as I walked back to the sign, shining my flashlight across the wood. The old paint looked fresh in the bean. Too fresh, like someone had repainted only the words. And carved into the back of the post where I wouldn't have seen it from the truck were 3 words, scratched deep into the wood. Turn around, now. I stood there reading that over and over, telling myself it had to be some old vandalism, some stupid prank by hikers. but the cuts in the wood looked clean, new. Sap still glistened around the letters. My radio clicked. Ryan. Status check. It was dispatch. I grabbed the mic too fast. Yeah, I think I'm turned around. I keep passing the same marker. Silence. Then static. Then my own voice answered before dispatch could. You already said that. I dropped the mic so hard it hit my knee. Ryan? Dispatch asked again, sounding distant now. Repeat that. I almost told them what happened. I almost said I'd just heard my own voice come through the radio. Instead, I said the dumbest thing possible. Bad signal. I'm fine. I got back in the truck and kept driving, because moving felt better than standing still. That lasted less than 4 minutes. The same sign appeared again in the headlights. Black Canyon Access. 4 miles. Same post. Same paint. But now there was something hanging from it. My park jacket. Dripping rainwater. Sleeves swaying gently. I slammed the brakes so hard the truck skidded sideways. My jacket had been in the back seat. I twisted around and looked. Empty. The back seat was bare. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat now. I stared through the windshield at the jacket hanging there, like someone had carefully placed it where I couldn't miss it. Then the driver's side mirror moved, just a little, tilting inward on its own until it pointed directly at my window. I don't know why that bothered me more than everything else, but it did. Because for a second I could see my own reflection in that mirror. And someone was sitting in the back seat behind me. I spun around so fast I hit my shoulder on the door. Nobody there. Empty seat. Rain tapping the glass. I looked back at the mirror. Empty again. I should have driven straight through the sign and gotten out of there. Instead, I made the mistake of getting out again. I told myself someone was messing with me. Another ranger. Some idiot from maintenance. Anything human felt easier than what my brain was trying to build. My jacket was cold when I grabbed it from the sign. Wet, heavy, and the inside pocket held my keys, my spare keys, the ones I kept locked in my desk back at the station. I stared at them in my palm until the radio inside the truck crackled once more. Then my own voice said, clearer this time, "You missed the turn again." I got back in and floored it. No more stopping, no more checking. I drove faster than I should have on those mountain roads, tires hissing on wet pavement. Trees flashing by so close they felt like they were leaning into the road. Then my headlights caught a wooden barrier across the lane, and I slammed the brakes. The truck stopped inches from it. The same sign was bolted to the barrier. Black Canyon Access, 4 miles. But underneath, someone had nailed a second board. This is where you stopped. My hands went numb on the wheel, because in the mud beside the barrier were tire tracks, fresh ones. My truck's tread pattern, leading up to the barrier, and parked off to the right side of the road, nose angle toward the trees, was my truck. Same unit number, same dent in the rear bumper, engine off, empty driver's seat. My own truck was already there. I sat frozen, staring at it through the rain. Same cracked windshield corner, same coffee cup on the dash, same everything. My radio hissed softly, and then my voice whispered, "Don't let him see you." I killed my headlights instantly. The road went black. For a few seconds I couldn't see anything except the glow of my dashboard. Then another set of headlights came on ahead of me. My other truck, the one parked near the trees. Its lights snapped on and pointed straight at me. I threw myself down in the seat, like that somehow made sense. My chest hurt from how hard my heart was hitting. I could hear my own breathing, the soft tick of cooling metal, and outside, over the rain, footsteps in gravel. Slow, crunch, pause. Circling my truck. I didn't look. I couldn't. The footsteps stopped beside my window. Then a knuckle tapped the grass. 3 slow knocks. Same rhythm. I squeezed my eyes shut like a kid because some part of me still thought if I didn't see it, it couldn't become real. Then the radio whispered right beside me. "Ryan, look at me." Same voice, mine. I started the truck without thinking and jammed it into reverse. I backed so hard the rear tires slid off the road, then caught. and the truck spun half sideways before straightening out. I drove blind for nearly a mile before I realized I was going downhill toward the main highway. Real road signs appeared. Real mile markers. The GPS suddenly snapped back to life like nothing had happened. When I reached the ranger station, the first thing I noticed was my supervisor standing outside waiting for me. He looked exhausted, angry. "Where the hell were you?" he asked. I told him I'd just come from the service road. He stared at me. Then he said, "Ryan, you radioed in 40 minutes ago. Said the sign was fixed. Said you were already back." I laughed, because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh. He walked me inside and played back the dispatch recording. It was my call sign, my voice, calm and clear. "Maintenance complete. Heading home. Time stamped 23 minutes before I reached the station." I listened to it twice without breathing. Nobody said much after that. They blamed radio interference, stress, fatigue, mountain roads. I let them. It was easier. I turned in my badge 3 days later. I haven't gone back to park work since. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, my GPS loses signal for a second. The screen freezes. And for just a moment, no matter where I am, it shows one road in the middle of the dark, with a single turn ahead, and a sign that still says, "Black Canyon Access, 4 miles. The radio on the wall said my name before I ever touched it. I was standing in a ranger station that wasn't supposed to exist, staring at a dusty desk, when a cracked speaker above the filing cabinet hissed once and said, "Evan, you need to leave. Right now." I froze so hard I could hear my own pulse in my ears. There was no one else in that building, no cars outside, no voices, no footsteps. Just that old speaker repeating my name in a voice that sounded almost like mine, only flatter somehow, like someone had learned it by listening too long. Then I looked down at the open logbook on the desk and saw my signature already written across the bottom of the page. My full name, my handwriting, time of arrival, 11:43 p.m., the exact minute I had stepped through the door. Except I had never signed anything. For a second, I honestly thought I was losing my mind. I just stood there staring at that page while the speaker crackled again. "Evan," it said. "He knows you're inside now. My name is Evan Mercer." I was 29 that summer, working seasonal fire watch support just outside the north side of Yellowstone National Park. Most of my shifts were boring: long drives, trail checks, weather reports, making sure idiots didn't wander into restricted areas after dark. I had been doing night rotations for almost 6 weeks, and by then, the isolation had started getting to me. When you spend enough nights alone in a truck with nothing but trees and static for company, your brain starts turning every shadow into a person. At least that's what I kept telling myself. That night started with a missing trail camera. My friend's cough and I were coming back, and we're sick. I hate the 5 pages while I saw them. One of our motion units near an old service road had gone offline around 10, and dispatch asked me to swing by before heading back. It was supposed to be a 20-minute detour. I remember because I almost ignored it. The road out there was narrow and half swallowed by overgrowth, and my headlights kept catching old wooden posts that looked like people standing just beyond the bean. I found the broken camera hanging sideways from a pine about 3 miles in. The strap had been cut clean through. Not torn, cut. That was the first thing that bothered me. Bears can wreck equipment, but they don't slice nylon in a straight line. I was crouched there checking the housing when I noticed a second light through the trees. Yellow, dim, steady. At first I thought it was another ranger truck, but it was too high and too still. It looked like a porch light. I stood there for a few seconds trying to remember if there was an old cabin in that sector. There shouldn't have been. I checked the map on the tablet in my truck. Nothing. Just forest and an old maintenance trail that ended decades ago. But the light was there. I should have left. I know that now. But when you work nights in places like that, curiosity becomes part of the job. Sometimes people squat in old structures. Sometimes hikers get lost. Sometimes someone needs help. So I followed the light. The farther I walk, the quieter everything got. No insects, No wind. Even my boots sounded wrong, like the forest floor was swallowing the noise. Then I saw it. A ranger station. Small. One story. Weathered wood siding. Green trim. Old National Park Service emblem above the door. It looked decades old, but not abandoned. There was fresh mud on the steps, a working porch bulb, and tire tracks outside that looked newer than mine. I pulled out my radio and called it in. "Dispatch, this is Mercer. I found a structure off Service Road 9. Do we have an old station in Sector 12? Static answered first. Then a woman from dispatch said, "Repeat that location." I repeated it. She was quiet for a second too long. Then she said, "Mercer, there is no station in Sector 12. I remember staring at the building while she said that, looking at the lit windows, the curtain moving slightly inside. "I'm looking at it," I said. "Someone has power out here." Another pause. Then she said, "Mercer, return to your vehicle." But before I could answer, another voice came through the radio. My voice. Calm. Clear. Already inside. I nearly dropped the radio. Then the line went dead. I told myself it was interference, cross signal, exhaustion, anything. But my hands were shaking when I climbed the steps. The front door was already ahead. Open an inch. Inside smelled like old paper and wet wood. There was a desk, a radio console, filing cabinets, maps pinned to the walls. Everything looked preserved, like someone had walked out 10 minutes earlier. A mug on the desk still had steam rising from it. That's when I noticed the logbook. It was open to that night. One entry, my name, my handwriting, my arrival time. Then the radio on the wall said my name. After that first warning, the whole building seemed to change. I noticed another set of boots by the door, same size as mine, same model, mud still wet on the soles. I slowly looked down at my own boots. Same tread, same damage near the left toe. That's when I noticed something worse. There was a photograph pinned beside the desk. A ranger standing in front of the station, face turned slightly away. Uniform identical to mine. Name patch visible. Mercer. I stepped closer, and my stomach dropped. It was me. Not just someone who looked like me. Me. Same scar on my chin. Same watch. Same jacket. The photo looked old, faded at the edges, but it was me, standing there smiling at the camera, like I belonged in that place. I stumbled backward so hard it knocked over a chair. The radio crackled again. "Don't let 'em see you." My own voice. Whispering this time. Then footsteps moved upstairs. Slow, heavy, directly above me. I hadn't even noticed the staircase in the corner before then. I just stood there listening as someone walked from one side of the ceiling to the other, then stopped directly above me. I called out because I didn't know what else to do. "Hello?" The footsteps stopped. Then from above me, in my own voice, something answered. "You shouldn't be here." I ran for the door. I didn't care how stupid it looked. I just turned and ran, but the front door slammed shut before I reached it, hard enough to shake the whole frame. I grabbed the handle. Locked. I twisted it again and again. Nothing. Then the porch light outside clicked off, and the windows went black. The only light left was the buzzing fluorescent over the desk. Then another sound started. Knocking. Inside the walls. 3 slow knocks to my left. Then behind me. Then above me. Like someone was moving through the station without ever stepping into the room. I backed toward the desk, trying to breathe, trying to think. My radio suddenly came alive on my belt. Dispatch was shouting. "Mercer, answer me now." I grabbed it. "I'm inside." The door rolled open. Silence. Then dispatch said quietly, "Mercer, your vehicle just pulled up at the main gate." I didn't understand at first. "What?" "Your unit," she said. "It just drove past camera 3. My blood went cold. My truck was parked outside. I could still see it through the side window. Then I heard tires crunching gravel outside the station. Another truck had arrived. Same engine, same idle, same broken fan belt squeak my truck had. And then a car door opened. Boots stepped onto gravel. My boots. Slow footsteps climbed the porch steps while I stood inside staring at the door. Then a shadow passed under the crack at the bottom, and my voice from the other side said, "Open up." I couldn't move. The doorknob turned, slowly. Once, twice, then stopped. "You're in my station," that voice said. I backed into the corner near the desk, holding the radio so hard my hand cramped. Dispatch kept asking what was happening, but I couldn't answer. I was staring at the door, while the thing outside breathed softly through the wood. Then the radio on the wall crackled one last time and said, "Run now." The lock clicked open by itself. I didn't think. I threw the door open and sprinted into the trees. I heard footsteps crashing behind me immediately. Same pace as mine, same breaths. Every time I dodged a branch, it snapped behind me half a second later. I ran until my lungs felt torn open. When I finally reached the road, my truck was gone. The station was gone too. Behind me there was nothing except dark trees and empty forest. No light, no building, no tracks, just dirt and silence. Dispatch found me walking down the service road nearly an hour later. They said I was 3 miles from where my truck had been parked. They said there had never been a ranger station in that part of the park, no old foundation, no utility records. Nothing. I tried explaining what happened, but halfway through the story I could hear how insane it sounded. They searched the area at sunrise and found the broken trail camera I had reported. Nothing else. No building, no footprints except mine. No second vehicle. No porch light. Nothing. I told myself for weeks that stress had caused it. Sleep deprivation. Isolation. Maybe some kind of breakdown. I almost believed that, until 2 nights later when I got called into the supervisor's office. He turned his monitor toward me and said, "Can you explain this?" It was footage from the main gate camera, time-stamped 11:43 p.m., the exact moment I had entered that station. My truck pulled through the checkpoint. I was driving, but in the passenger seat, someone was sitting beside me. And when the camera zoomed in, I saw my own face staring back through the window, smiling before I ever remembered arriving.